everyone and welcome to LewisFiction, and welcome to What If Gwen Stacy Survived the Events of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now this is a question that I've pondered before in another video, but since that was about 4 years ago, I wanted to revamp and sort of restyle this video and this story slightly. So in this alternate timeline of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Peter Parker and Harry Osborn will be engaging in their final battle. It will be tough and Peter's hardest fought battle yet. Not just physically, but mentally as well. Gwen hangs on by a thread in the clock tower, and during the battle, the cogs break inside the clock, causing Gwen to fall. Peter thinks about spinning a web out to catch her, but doesn't, and this time webs the walls around him, using them as a propel to spear him towards Gwen. He speeds towards Gwen, and just in the nick of time catches her without breaking her neck. Peter webs the ceiling, taking the brunt of the sudden stop himself. Gwen is safe. Peter lets her down safely as he goes back to check on Harry. He returns to the upper level of the tower to find webbing wrapped around his throat. Peter unravels the webbing and Harry is taken away by the authorities and placed in the Ravencroft institution. Gwen and Peter will spend the rest of the night with a bittersweet taste in their mouths. Gwen is still leaving for England despite everything that happened, and Peter can't bear to see her leave. Linking back to Peter's previous conversation with Gwen before the battle with Electro, Peter will say that he's going to go with her. He thinks this is the best way for them to not be separated. After all, Peter's arc in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was to come to terms with the fact that no matter what Captain Stacy said, Peter and Gwen can never be separate from each other. This obviously in the original film led to her death and Peter learning his lesson the hard way. However, since she didn't actually die in this alternate universe, this lesson would never be learned, so Peter would still want to go to England with Gwen. Gwen, however, doesn't think this is a good idea. Thinking about the people of New York, Gwen will tell Peter that these people need him. Without him, New York would be in tatters. People would be running around as giant lizards, or the entire city's power grid would be controlled by Max Dillon. Peter understands this, but tells Gwen there'll be some crime that needs stopping in London, surely. Gwen shrugs this off for now. She also does want Peter to come along, but she knows the responsibility that he holds. During this time, the gentleman will visit Harry Osborn in prison, and this time we will get an extended conversation from the post-credit scene of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. This time, the gentleman will ask Harry who the identity of Spider-Man is, and Harry will reveal that it was his once best friend, Peter Parker. Harry at this point in the story will still be bitter about Peter's lack of willingness to give him blood to cure his Osborn disease. I also imagine that if The Amazing Spider-Man 3 or the cancelled Sinister Six film happened as well, that Harry probably would have ended up revealing Peter's secret identity to either the Sinister Six or the Gentleman, so I just believe that is probably an extension of what would have happened in that story here. Harry also believes Peter to be responsible for the position that he is currently in right now. Everything leads back to Peter, and Harry just wants revenge. The Gentleman, who has plans to take down Spider-Man, tells Harry about the Sinister Six, and about how they can take him out in one fell swoop. Spider-Man's disappearance in the original film meant that the Rhino didn't show up until a lot later, and I also imagine that Spider-Man's disappearance put the Gentleman's plans on hold. However, since Peter is still Spider-Man at this time, it accelerates the formation of the Sinister Six. The Gentleman decides to test out the Rhino mech suit by breaking Alexei from jail and telling him to take down Spider-Man. This way, the Gentleman will get a good sense of whether his Oscorp mech equipment has what it takes to size up against Spider-Man. However, on the Peter side of things, he starts packing for the UK, telling Aunt May that he's going to move over there with Gwen. Aunt May looks rather surprised by this for an odd reason. There is something that she's not letting on to. Either way, Aunt May reassures him that this is a positive move, knowing how in love they are. One person that isn't sure of this is Gwen herself. Gwen knows her father would want Peter to continue to be Spider-Man for the people that he isn't able to protect anymore, and Gwen's character arc throughout TASM 2 up until this new point in the story has gone from not understanding why Peter was so on and off with her all of these years, to now realizing after the Electro and Goblin fight exactly why Peter was so touchy about their relationship. Spider-Man will always have villains, Spider-Man will always have problems and people to save, and she doesn't want Peter to give that up. Not for her. But Peter is blinded by love, and to an extent Gwen is as well. They will make it to JFK, however, there will be reports of a man in a giant rhino machine wreaking havoc in the Manhattan city center. Gwen will give Peter a look, and Peter will say if he leaves now, he'll miss their flight. Gwen will tell Peter that he needs to go. As she starts to tear up, you can see the disbelief on Peter's face during this moment. He knows this is it. She tells him that this is exactly why he can't come to England. These people need Spider-Man more than Gwen Stacy needs Peter Parker. And in a tragic turn of events, the heartbreaking separation of Gwen and Peter happens all the same, for the same reason of responsibility, except this time Gwen Stacy is still alive, as Peter makes his way back to Manhattan to fight the Rhino. However, the fight is bitter and sad. Peter doesn't crack a single joke or any sort of quip. He's angry, upset, and in the end, he is cheered on by the people of New York, even seeing the same kid who he stopped from getting bullied earlier on in TASM 2. He is a hero in so many people's eyes, and Peter finally realizes what Gwen was leading on to. He watches into the sky thinking of Gwen, realizing what she meant, realizing that this was the reason why she wanted Peter to stay and to continue being Spider-Man. Not just for her, not just for Aunt May, and not even for her father, but for the people of New York City. He will never not be New York's Spider-Man. No matter what, that's his main responsibility. Even though the Gwen Stacy story comes to an end here, the overall story doesn't. There are a bunch of loose threads that still need tying up. From here on out, the Gentleman, I imagine, would create the Sinister Six. I also imagine the Gentleman would probably get some kind of backstory linking him to why he actually wants to take down Spider-Man. Potentially, he was an associate of Richard Parker, or Norman Osborn, or maybe just some shady man who wants all the power and all the money at Oscorp, but Spider-Man seems to be threatening that. One of those backstories was probably in line for the Gentleman anyway, in the Amazing Spider-Man 3 or the cancelled Sinister Six film. I also imagine that the Sinister Six, especially Harry Osborn, would use his secret identity against him, possibly even kidnapping Aunt May, and maybe even leading to her death in this universe. I'd also imagine that Aunt May during this period of time would reveal to Peter that she knew he was Spider-Man all this time, similar to the scene that we got in Marvel's Spider-Man, which would actually link back to some of the moments just before Gwen left for England. After her death, I imagine Gwen would briefly return to New York, but by that point, Mary Jane Watson probably would have been introduced, creating a very interesting love triangle dynamic between the three of them that could see some very juicy character drama. Mary Jane, I imagine, would be introduced in the wake of Aunt May's death, and would be the main person to comfort Peter during this time, which would create a very solid bond between the two characters. As we know, Mary Jane became a very prominent character in the comics after Gwen's death, comforting Peter during that time, and it would probably be a very similar situation here, except it would be for Aunt May's death. Either way, there are many different directions it could be taken in from this point, but either way, that's what I personally would have think would have happened if Gwen Stacy survived the events of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, make sure to hit that like button and make sure to subscribe down below for more fanfiction stories, what-if scenarios, and restructuring videos. Make sure to tell me in the comments below as well other video ideas you want me to cover, whether they're what-if, restructurings, or anything like that, and maybe your idea might just be the next video. Subscribe if you're new. Also, if you love my content and want to support the channel, consider becoming a member by clicking the join button down below. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care and peace.